Hey, I'm coming to you from the Walmart parking lot. I've got my phone attached to my visor with a couple rubber bands, and I look over to my right and I see that my nephew, I guess, would that make his wife my niece? I don't know. Car next to me. Lester, the Amish fellow that I drive for, is in getting a few things for his trip tomorrow. I'm taking him to Green River State Park. They're going to have a family camp out with his mother-in-law and others. They do this every year. We did a estimation on a gutter job a little bit before coming here, and then when I get him back home after a few more stops, I'm going to bring his wife in back to Walmart. And that's about how my days go, driving for the Amish. I'm getting ready to make a change. I'm going to stop driving for Lester. That's a flat daily rate that he pays me. But I'm just going to go back to hauling locally for other Amish folk and family. That'll free me up with some time. I need to spend a little more time at home around helping my mother. And the pay will be about the same, less expenses. You know, when I go about doing all these things, my mind is constantly on the days that we're living in, not because of the news items, but from Bible reading and from study of prophecy, that we're living near the end. I did a video, Facebook Live, this morning about the relationship a little bit, not in a lot of detail, between the sealing vision of when God's people are sealed in their foreheads symbolically in Revelation 7, and comparing that with Ezekiel 9. And also, I think it draws from the Passover story of Exodus. Are we ready for the things that are coming? The chapter 6 of Revelation closes with the question, who will be able to stand? And I didn't mention it this morning, but I'll mention it now. Those verses also speak of God's wrath, the standing. The question, who will be able to stand? Who will be able to stand when the wrath of the Lamb, and it speaks literally of the wrath of the Lamb, that is Jesus, the Lamb being the symbol of him who sacrificed for us. It seems like a great paradox that this Lamb is going to exercise judgment and even punishment prior to his coming on the world. It's not payback in the sense of what people do, but I did also say this morning that many people have trouble, and I have no sympathy for their trouble, to be honest. No sympathy at all for their trouble about God judging. We don't like to be held accountable. The world resists any idea that God will judge them. And that's because the world does everything on the basis of balancing out their good deeds and their bad deeds. And they feel if they're reasonably good and they've got a few good deeds, then who is God to hold them accountable for the bad that they've done? I see Nikki there. She's getting in her car. She didn't see me in her own little world, I guess. That's her car starting up there. Back to judgment. Paul says at the end of Romans 1 that those who do the things, he gives an outline of sins, that they are worthy of death. The Bible says the wages of sin is death. And that is a just punishment. That is a just outcome for the wickedness of this world. If you do not understand the violence and the suffering that human beings bring upon one another, the inhumanity of man to man, you're either a participant in that or you're just very naive. I've seen some of that myself. I've participated in some of that myself over the years. Who will deliver us from this shame? How can we be delivered from the shame of our nakedness? Jesus brings that up in Revelation 3, the part of the counsel of the true witness for the church of the last days is that the shame of our nakedness will be covered with his robe of righteousness. And those who are not covered, just as it was in the Passover, are exposed to the wrath of God. Now is the time. Now is the time. This great final day of atonement, when the blood is being applied to God's people. The judgment hour is about to end before Christ comes. It ends before he comes. And it begins with the church. You see that in Ezekiel 9. The judgment begins with the people of God. In fact, it begins with the leaders. It begins in the sanctuary, in the temple of God there at Jerusalem, which there represented the church. They will be held most accountable for their corruptions. As you study the book of Revelation, you will see that the terrible, terrible message is that this entity called Babylon, the church is symbolically referred to as Babylon, the Church Universal, Roman Protestant, has become corrupt. That pure woman of Revelation 12 in the beginning has been seduced, and she becomes a seductress. That is the sign of the last days, the apostasy, the falling away that Jesus spoke of in Matthew 24. It's not all the news events. Those are terrible enough, the earthquakes, fires, floods. Those are signs of his coming as well. But the great sign is this terrible corruption that has come into Christendom. And that is what the beast intends to do. Revelation 13 is this imitation of godliness, this false trinity, this false religion. And the final battle will be over. Who do you worship? Who do you give your adoration to? Who do you give your devotion to? Those who are sealed, who are symbolically spoken of as the 144,000, are those who are also symbolically spoken of as pure virgins. They are not spiritually immoral. They are not adulteresses. They have not adulterated themselves with false doctrine, with false experience. They're completely devoted to Christ, to knowing him, to him living in them. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes, it says. That's who the 144,000 are. That's who those who are sealed are. They don't follow the false lamb-like beast of Revelation 13. And that's the only deliverance from the mark of the beast, Revelation 14. Those are the ones who are going to be judged, destroyed, punished, given blood to drink because they have shed the blood of saints. As I said this morning, Revelation is full of violent images. And if you don't have spiritual insight, if you don't have faith, if you're not listening, if you're not teachable, you will misinterpret everything. And the greatest deception is that you will misinterpret the character of God. You will blame him when he judges. You will take up the devil's charges that God is unjust, that his law cannot be kept. That is what is at issue here. Not only the salvation of man, but the character of God. But I don't need to vindicate God. Christ has done that at Calvary. I don't believe that this last generation is going to be the vindication of God. God doesn't need me to vindicate him. I need him to save me. And in the way he saves, through the work of the cross, that's his vindication. In restoring the image of Christ and him crucified in his children. Well, this is an off-the-cuff ramble while I'm sitting in the Walmart parking lot. That's how I do theology, and that's how I live my life. What I want to be a life of faith. I don't feel particularly righteous. I don't feel particularly holy. I trust God. I trust him in this moment, this particular moment, to be present with you, to be present with me in his word, by his Spirit, as unworthy as I feel, and I do feel that today, falling far short. My only hope is in his blood. My only hope is in his righteousness and in his love for me and his grace. He's good and holy and just in his mercies and in his judgment. There's no contradiction. That's my message for today. I hope you find it to be a blessing, and maybe I'll be doing a little more frequently these type of videos on the fly. Lifestyle being what it is, mine, perhaps yours. God bless you. Take care.